Now, there is an entirely new way to look at the unidentified anomalous phenomena. First, it should be understood as a phenomenon capable of moving through invisible domains, whether we call them afterlife realms or Bardo-like states, and projecting itself into the deepest layers of the psyche where it can reshape how we see ourselves and the world. Second, it must also be seen not as supernatural, but physical. Even official reports admit that poorly understood plasmas are involved, that these aren't imaginary, they are real and worth studying. Declassified intelligence reports, such as the Condign report, go even further, stating that these plasmas can influence the temporal lobe, the core interface through which our biocostume processes memory, identity, and intelligent thought. If reality is indeterminate, then perhaps it can be influenced, its outcomes nudged, before they crystallize into classical form. What then is the true relationship between these invisible domains of matter? And do they open an easier bridge to the more subtle domains of consciousness, the realms religion calls spiritual and science has yet to comprehend?
They have enormous ability to come to our dimension as a discarnate and have a physical effect on a material object or a bio-object, a living thing, a human being, can have a tremendous effect. Moving a physical object in all different kinds of ways, very heavy objects, causing them to reconstitute themselves, which sounds ridiculous. I've had that happen. So it is absolutely fascinating, fantastic, what the discarnate spirits can do. And by the way, any human transcending from incarnate to discarnate has a spirit. The soul is a companion to that. But the soul is a characteristic. The soul is the character of the spirit and kind of describes the integrity and the morals and the love or hate that the spirit has. So the characteristic of the discarnate spirit is so different from ours, so much more powerful. It can influence us subconsciously.
If so, advanced intelligences may wield abilities that look like magic to us, altering time, editing reality, maybe even raising the dead. From what we know in world mythology, such acts carry consequences. Asclepios raised a man from the dead, and Zeus struck him down. Christ raised Lazarus and was executed soon after. Elijah revived a child and then vanished in a whirlwind. Seen through the lens of a connected multiverse and its many Bardo states, resurrection here might be perceived as a kind of murder on the other side, a violation of free will and a disruption of the balance between the realms. The possibility of balanced, coexisting Bardo-like domains is something some scholars are beginning to explore, though they never use that language, or angle, of course. In philosophy, the idea that reality unfolds in layers has existed for a long time, presented as modes of existence rather than different substances. But a striking parallel also appears in mathematics. In William Clifford's work, he showed that space doesn't have to be described only by points and lines. It can also be understood as families of rotating planes, all present at once. A simple way to picture this is a Rolodex. Each card is a plane. When you turn it, nothing disappears. One plane doesn't replace another, it simply comes into view. Clifford's algebra describes how many such planes can coexist, each defined by orientation, connected by smooth rotations that preserve the underlying structure. Why does this matter? Because it offers a way to think about coexistence without separation. Different domains don't need to be divided by distance, they may differ in the way they are organized. What looks like another realm may be the same structure, but accessible in a different mode of perception. Philosopher Nikolai Hartmann described reality in a similar way, as layered rather than fragmented. He proposed 4 levels: the inorganic, the organic, the psychological, and the spiritual. Each higher layer rests upon the one below it, yet cannot be reduced to it. All coexist. Each is real. Each follows its own rules, and none cancels the others out. Clifford's mathematics hints at the possibility that moving from one world to another might be less like crossing a boundary and more like turning a page or rotating a plane within a shared space. This brings modern ideas closer to ancient ones than we might expect. Dean Rickles has suggested that the multiverse may be rooted in inner structures of consciousness. Hartman would have recognized this immediately as a question of layers and modes of being. It also offers a different way to read certain human experiences. People sometimes describe sitting across from someone who has died, fully present and unchanged, as if in another layer of reality, that person was never dead at all. Within a layered framework, death may mark the end of participation in one domain, not the end of existence itself. And this also explains why the deceased who appear alongside the so-called aliens often insist they are perfectly fine. Perhaps they are, just not on this side of reality.
The other side has a huge advantage over us. And being able to change your viewpoint in that once you can start to see a little light, let's just use that word from a dreary kind of location, but you're not in a hellfire, burning up kind of thing and the devil and so forth. It's that humans are the devils on the other side. Bad spirits are the devils in a lot of ways. But once that changes, it starts to be desirable and you can see a glimmer of light in the darkness. The other side has the ability to make holy cow visions. Holy cow. Changes that you will see. And that's what the research indicates. Okay, really reliable sources. We can't do that on this side. We can't create a vision, something that you can touch and feel like the other side can, that you can actually walk through. You can touch and feel and see and hear all a completely new environment.
So the physical aspect of the anomalous phenomenon is real. The strangeness arises because whether naturally, technologically, or both, bridging becomes possible across different frequency levels of reality. Some entities we call aliens may indeed originate from distant stars. But could they reach our world non-locally, emerging from unseen layers of reality around us? If the answers are positive, the irony is extraordinary. For decades, the public was encouraged to imagine exotic interstellar travel to explain their presence, when the real distance might not be unimaginably far, but unimaginably close. And behind the scenes, another story was unfolding. Intelligence services studying the UFO phenomenon recognized the Psi connection to anomalous encounters and to hidden invisible domains very early, long before the public suspected anything at all.
We tracked this guy down. He turns out to be Dr. Eric Walker, who is former president of Penn State University. For 15 years, he was the chairman of the board of the Institute for Defense Analysis, which is the top military think tank for the United States military. He was the co-developer of the homing torpedo. He was friends with Vannevar Bush. He had this incredible, unbelievable background of, military and connections with presidents and stuff like this. So when we go to him, we're interviewing him as UFO researchers. We're not thinking about the mind we couldn't care less about. We had no connection whatsoever. And in 1990, in the middle of one of these interviews, he suddenly cuts off the conversation, talking about hardware, about bodies and all sorts. And he suddenly says, "How good is your sixth sense? How much do you know about ESP?" And the other guy goes, "Well, I don't really, it's not of interest to him. I don't know what's going on." And Walker says, unless you know about ESP and how you use it, you would not be taken in by this overriding group that runs the UFO program. Only a few know about it. And then in 1993, there's a related story with Ben Rich. Ben Rich was the guy who ran Skunk Works, the U-2, the SR-71, the Stealth Fighter, the Stealth Bomber. They were all developed by what was called Skunk Works, and Ben Rich ran it. And he would get a number of questions about what was this UFO technology. And he's giving a lecture in 1993. He's dying of cancer. He gives a lecture at UCLA to a bunch of engineers. He finishes the lecture, he's walking out, and one of the engineers who's interested in UFOs runs after him. And he says to Ben Rich, Ben Rich, how are these things propelled? How are UFOs propelled? And Ben Rich turns around and he says to them, let me ask you a question. How does ESP work?
So the connection to consciousness and psi phenomena was on the table very early on, but how early? In a declassified FBI memo from as far back as 9047, an unknown individual, possibly Meade Lane, the American academic who developed the early ethership UFO hypothesis, reports that the data herein were obtained by so-called supernormal means. He goes on to claim that part of the disks carry crews, others are under remote control. Their mission is peaceful. The visitors contemplate settling on this plane. These visitors are human-like, but much larger in size. They are not excarnate Earth people, but come from their own world. They do not come from any planet, as we use the word, but from an etheric planet, which interpenetrates with our own and is not perceptible to us. The bodies of the visitors and the craft also automatically materialize on entering the vibratory rate of our dense matter. So, at the very least, the link between psi and the UFO phenomenon was already being articulated in official files and in surprisingly explicit terms as early as the late 40s. Another very important document comes from the Declassified National Archives of Canada. In a 9050 memo, Wilbert Smith, a senior radio engineer in Canada's equivalent of the NSA, told his superiors at the Ministry of Transport that flying saucers were real, under active study, and the matter is the most highly classified subject in the United States government, rating higher even than the H-bomb. And then a very important paragraph goes often overlooked. The United States authorities are investigating along quite a number of lines, which might possibly be related to the saucers, such as mental phenomena, and I gather that they are not doing too well.
W.B. Smith speaking. I have been actively engaged in the investigation of the group of phenomena known as flying saucers for over 7 years. During this period, I have read most of the available literature on the subject, interviewed a great many people who have seen unusual things in the sky, examined many pictures and physical objects, made observations with scientific instruments, and carried on series of communications with intelligences claiming to be extraterrestrial.
Smith believed UFOs were linked to psychic phenomena and believed himself to be in contact with extraterrestrial beings who communicated to him through telepathy. He started the investigation out of curiosity and as an extreme skeptic, fully expecting to find the phenomenon to be due to man-made or natural causes.
I am 48 years old, hold a master's degree in electrical engineering, occupy a responsible position in the Canadian government, hold a half-dozen patents, author of several technical papers, and in general enjoy a background in technical work and science, indicating at least an average competence to study and report on phenomena of a scientific nature. There have been quite a number of alleged communications with intelligences claiming to be extraterrestrial. I have followed up each such instance to the best of my ability in an effort to A, establish or disprove the validity of the alleged communication, and B, to obtain any information which might be available if the contact should be authentic. As might be expected, many of these alleged contacts provided little or nothing of value, but a few did pay off. Some of the contacts have been the subject of published material, but by far the majority are confidential, and there are a surprising number of these contacts. The inevitable conclusion was that it was all real enough, but that the alien science was definitely alien, and possibly even forever beyond our comprehension.
Smith wrote that another approach had been tried afterwards, a philosophical one, and there the answer revealed itself. It was in a fundamental oneness of the universe. Science, philosophy, religion, matter, and energy were simply facets of the same higher order phenomenon, and to understand any part, one must grasp the whole. From this came a realization that was simple and profound. We are not alone.
The human race in the form of man extends throughout the universe and is incredibly ancient. Also, its appearance in physical form is but one of its many manifestations along the path of progress. Our civilization here on Earth now is only one of many that have come and gone. This planet has been colonized many times by people from elsewhere, and our present human race are blood brothers of these people.
Smith reported part of this in a declassified memo, drawn from his own research and from his communications with U.S. colleagues as far back as the 50s. But the core of these ideas was never truly secret. Many early cultures carried the notion of a human origin among the stars, or a path of return to them woven directly into their myths. What's even more striking is that references to what we now call aliens, or to the non-human nature of the dead, appear in ancient texts long before any such terms existed. One early example comes from ancient Ugarit, in texts from the mid-14th century BCE describing the Rephaim. These were understood as the spirits of the dead, especially kings, heroes, and sages, but also as exceptional beings who, through initiation and sacred knowledge, could access realms normally reserved for the dead while still alive, basically ancient people with psi abilities. These figures were said to dwell in the abode of the gods and were called gods, star beings, or heavenly beings. If so, then how different in meaning is the term star being from what we now call an extraterrestrial? Rephaim were believed to possess extraordinary knowledge, foresight, healing abilities, and even the power to restore life. Some of the dead were believed to belong fully to the other world. Others were said to remain in an in-between realm between lives. And some, the Rephaim of the land, were thought to stay active on Earth, sometimes described as gods of the Earth.
If you're comfortable with survival of the container, you're going to survive your container and you're going to say, what am I? What is it? I mean, that's going to survive the container. Well, it's your consciousness, and that includes your personality and includes all your memories. And, and it's actually much more than that, because it's a memory of just, and then here's another jump. If you do survive your container, is reincarnation real?
No matter whether reincarnation is real, the key issue here is memory. If experience truly carries forward, how can anything learned in a dense physical body be useful to an entity that will eventually move through other realms, far subtler than this one?
So, the act of creation for 3D beings is having a baby, right? Producing another three-dimensional object. Well, if you're in 5-dimensional space or even 4-dimensional physical space, what if at creation is creating other conscious realities in other universes, and the act of creation is creating the universe where you, me, Jamie, whatever we might be connected to, the same, I'll call it universal consciousness or a higher dimensional sentient life force or life form. It's like, think about it, it's like a weird 3D plus time temporal sensory experience for a higher dimensional sentience. You're here to experience time in this weird linear fashion and to experience yourself divorced from yourself. To gain knowledge and to report back is maybe what life is.
Okay, but how does anything learned here apply there? How can experiences from a world of solid matter help a being that supposedly moves freely through realities far more fluid, subtle, and multidimensional? Surprisingly, some of the deepest insights into this mystery come not from metaphysics or parapsychology, but from modern biology.